We went from 0 to 100,000 a month just through sending cold emails and posting on Twitter. Sales is obviously a huge part of every single business. I dislike sales. And so I knew that I needed to find someone that was really good at sales and really enjoyed doing sales. The most successful entrepreneurs are the guys that create the most opportunities for other people. A year and a half into it, we had already invested over 150 grand into building the software and had literally nothing to show for it. We didn't want to go the VC route because as soon as you go the VC route, at least from my experience, what I've heard, it's like you're no longer in control. And so whatever happened when we started Client Ascension, we just did not care. Like we were just going to be like, we're going to be like our own authentic selves. We're going to talk how we want to talk, like on our podcast, at events, the way we do things. And if people like it, great. If not, no problem. And people loved it. And so that's how Client Ascension grew.
Guys, what's going on? We got another episode of the WANTREPRENEUR Podcast here. I got Andre. He's a serial entrepreneur involved with a lot of companies, Client Ascension, ListKit, different agencies, very involved also in vocal and sort of the online space. Excited to talk with him and kind of hear about his start. Andre, for context, we have like a entrepreneurship community. I've sold a couple businesses. And basically, we bring on people that kind of help that early stage sort of entrepreneur type person. I'm sure you've been in those days. Yeah. So for the audience, maybe you can just give like a quick intro to how you became an entrepreneur in the first place.
Yeah, it's funny you introduced me as like a serial entrepreneur. I feel like that is the proper categorization today. But for the longest time, I was an entrepreneur. Nice. Like for a lot longer than I've been an entrepreneur. Nice. And so if that's you, just know that that's okay. And you'll eventually get out of it through, following guys like Chris and listening to podcasts like this. But yeah, nowadays running multiple companies and businesses, even before I was running multiple companies and businesses, but they weren't companies and businesses like I know now. And so I'm excited to be on this show and to be able to speak to essentially a past version of myself that I feel like a lot of the audience is currently at.
Totally. So I think people might be familiar with you online and kind of what you do now, but like, what were you doing like before you started the business or started the business?
Bro, so like,
where were you at?
I've been in entrepreneurship like my whole life essentially, or really since like middle school. Because I grew up around entrepreneurs. My dad was an entrepreneur, and my grandpa. Like the two biggest inspirations in my life were successful entrepreneurs. And so I just knew that's what I wanted to do. And so like the first time I had to go and get a job because my mom like would not let me sit home all summer and do nothing, is when I realized that I was actually an entrepreneur, because I worked at that job for just a couple of weeks before I found a new way to make money, which was by reselling sneakers. So I could go to the mall on weekends only, pick up a couple pairs of the limited edition Jordans releasing that weekend and resell them and make as much money as I was slaving away at our family business at the time, where I was like proofreading the coupon books. That was my entire job. It was awful. Super manual labor. But that's when I really started entrepreneurship. I got into sneaker reselling pretty heavily all the way through the end of high school. And then in college, tried and failed at a couple ventures. But ultimately what helped me find my way was podcasting. Funny enough, that's why I'm such a big advocate for podcasting.
Nice.
And really all that was myself and Christian, my business partner now, reaching out to entrepreneurs that we were following online and asking them questions that we had. It's like, what did you do to make money? How did you overcome these challenges that we're currently facing? What do you do with your free time? Like, what do you attribute your success to? And so we did over 200 interviews all throughout college with like legit successful entrepreneurs like Guy Kawasaki. We did an interview in Gary Vee's office in New York City. We did an interview with Neil Patel, like some of these big business moguls, and really just applied those learnings to start our marketing agency back in the day. And that's what rolled into what we do now with Client Ascension and ListKit.
Were you still in college at that point when you started doing the pod?
Yeah, the podcast started freshman year of college, and that was basically all we did throughout college. So we didn't have too much success with the business in college, except towards the end. Like when we graduated, we were able to scale an agency to around $20,000 a month. And that was like our goal by graduation, is to have an agency doing some sort of revenue so that like we can justify to our parents why we're not actively looking for a job.
Nice.
After getting this degree. that they help pay for.
Exactly.
And so that was that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned your parents or your grandparent being an entrepreneur. Like I've interviewed like 50 people, and a lot of like the most successful ones that have gone the farthest, raised a ton of money, etc. They all like have it sort of makes it possible for them, or maybe for you, like in a way that somebody whose parents are like just suiting up every day, right? Like
Oh yeah.
it's a different story, but it's always interesting to find out like if you had that, because I think that it influences people's mentality. I think a lot, whereas may have set you up for success. So I guess when you started the podcast, it was just you had like an interest in tech or startup or the agency world, or like how did you get kind of tied into that niche?
Yeah, funny enough, so like senior year of high school, I decided to switch from golf. So like in high school, I thought I was gonna go to college for golf
Yeah,
and like play professional. That was like my plan. Um, it didn't end up working out. I wasn't good enough. Like that was like the brutal, honest moment I had in high school. I wasn't good enough to be a pro golfer.
sure.
And so I just decided I'd have fun senior year, and I switched to soccer because all my best friends were playing soccer. And I got along really well with the soccer coach. And the soccer coach would call me Gary V. And I had no idea who Gary V was. He's like, but like, you're Gary V.
Yeah,
You look like him. You talk like him. You're interested in business like this guy. Go home and watch him. And I'm like, okay, like, who is this guy? And so I got hooked on Gary V videos right during that soccer season.
nice.
And Gary V basically, like, I read his book during high school that senior year. So like I went down that rabbit hole of like you have to you can make money online doing anything you want. Like you could start a podcast, you could do whatever you're passionate about and find a way to make money online and be happy. And his model was really like geared towards agency businesses. And so that's really the avenue we followed with the podcast. Is I wasn't super interested in like tech or
Yeah,
software or anything like that. I was more so just interested in like entrepreneurship, marketing, agency type businesses. And that's how we got into like the interviews, like I said, with like someone like Neil Patel and someone with like a Guy Kawasaki and doing an
the
interview in
more
Gary Vee's
classic
office.
internet marketer type guys.
Internet marketers. Yeah, exactly, dude.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I got my start same way. So, and then what did you like? So, what type of how do you start doing agency projects? Or you just like have podcast guests and you're like, hey, I can do your website, SEO, PPC.
Exactly. It was so like
Yeah,
unintended because we were doing the podcast and like the podcast was great. We were having fun. But at the same time, it's like we keep talking to these successful people. Like, at what point are we going to do something on our own and do what they're telling us, right? Like, take a step back and implement. And we still never really did anything about it. But we would get guests that come to the show, and they'd be like, "Yeah, I'm super impressed with like your guys' Instagram page and the way that you guys have built, the website for your podcast show." And so we realized like we had this thing that people wanted, which was how do you run a weekly interview show podcast? Because there are things behind it, right? Like especially back then, like the software was super archaic and it was not as accessible to like start a podcast and produce a podcast like it is now. We had a really nice website, so we knew how to build websites, and we had a great following on Instagram. So like I knew how to build social
nice.
media followings because even before that with like the sneaker business reselling, like I had a huge following on Twitter, and so I knew how to like do content and to sell on social media. And so people would start to ask us like, hey, where do you make your website, or who does your Instagram? And so we realized like people are asking for this,
Yeah,
we might as well have something to sell them. And that's where our first agency started.
nice. Yeah. It's interesting that you guys had like the social media and the podcast path to it. Like, I did a classic sort of tech startup in college, fun, right? Went the VC route, sold
Wow.
it. And then when I got out of college, I was like, dude, I need the Friday drink money. I need the girl money. So I started
Yeah.
going Craigslist websites, boom, Upwork,
Yeah.
100K month, like freaking, you know what
Wow.
I'm saying? Just like figuring it out kind of as we go. But
Hmm.
I guess did you sort of think that was going to happen, or like did you sort of think like, hey, we could do a service agency on top of the podcast, or sort of just
No, I was always the big idea guy, similar to
yeah,
you. Like, so, like when I first got introduced to entrepreneurship, my grandpa like was successful through exits. Like that's how he built his
so you're
wealth,
in,
and I knew that. Like he had multiple exits, and I knew to have an exit, like you'd have to have a well-established company that's really centered around
yeah,
technology, or at least that's what my grandpa told me. It's like it's all about the technology. And so I got super interested in like obviously like Steve Jobs, and like I had the first edition magazine of like Founder, which was like that online company that talked about like startups and
It's like
whatnot.
the
So
biggest
I was
entrepreneurship
super
mag, yeah. Besides,
yeah, so I was super interested in like Richard Branson and Elon Musk and some of these bigger names. But like, I think that's also what really limited how much I was able to do for a long time, because there was too big of a gap. Like I was trying to create this next big
yeah,
idea, and it was not
yeah,
happening. Right? It was not happening
it's
for me.
yeah,
And I'm someone that needs like the quick success, or like
yeah,
validation early on, and that's what the agency model did. It's like I have this idea for an agency where we could sell
yeah.
websites, and like the next morning we sell our first project and get paid, and it's like, this is insane, you know?
Well, it's like I got a guy in my accelerator who's doing like a mental health thing where they got to build out some AI and technology. It's like your first company, dude. It's better if it's an agency B2B, because that way you get those quick wins, right? You get motivated, you can do some good work, build up the relationships. Like, as if you're
Yeah,
coming in like, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur, self-employed, like an agency is really the best company to, you know what I'm saying? It's to
yeah,
get your entrepreneurship gene sort of built.
100%. Yeah, and so like even a great example of this now is like ListKit. It's our software
Right.
business. We always knew we wanted it to be a software, but people don't know this. Like we started ListKit in July of
Yeah.
2021. We relaunched in July of 2023 as a software. And the only reason we were able to do that successfully was because for the 2 years prior, we ran it as a productized service business. So people would place an order on our website and we'd manually fulfill it on the
Yeah.
back end. And by doing that, we were able to fund the entire technology that we now built to make it a self-serve technology platform that it is today.
Nice. Yeah, I definitely want to get into ListKit a little bit more, because I had an outbound agency, did for 5 years, like literally 90% of the revenue was cold email. So like I sort of switched to from agency, just general SEO website, to cold email, maybe like 2019. And then sort of
Right.
just rocked it from there. But so I definitely want to talk about ListKit, particularly what you're doing with that, versus the competitors, etc. Just further though, like on I guess the other business or other businesses, you always had partners in these businesses. Like, was there anything that you went on solo, or you always came in with kind of co-founders?
Yeah, I always came in with co-founders. So one of the biggest lessons I learned from doing the podcast was like, what is business really? So here's what I realized, because like I would look at who's successful and who's not in entrepreneurship, and like I think the most successful entrepreneurs are the guys that create the most opportunities for other people. Meaning, like that's what a business does, right?
Yeah,
Like businesses drive the economy because they create job opportunities. Whereas a lot of people that are entrepreneurs are more so like just like influencers that only like have a business for themselves, right?
yeah,
And they're not actually like creating job opportunities for other people. So I wanted to do the latter, like create job opportunities. Um, and one way I was able to do that was through having business partners. So as soon as I realized like the key to success in business, at least for me, was through other people and building like a true organization, I knew I couldn't do it alone, because there are like multiple departments within a business. For example, like sales is obviously a huge part of every single business. I dislike sales. And so I knew that I needed to find someone that was really good at sales and really enjoyed doing sales, because I didn't want to have to be that guy.
nice.
And so I had a business partner,
Yeah,
Dan, who's one of our partners that focuses on sales, and same thing with marketing and building funnels and doing ads. So it just helped me like really,
yeah.
focus in on what I'm good at and what I enjoy doing, and same for the other guys. And that's like my biggest secret to success, I would say, is I found the right business
It's
partners, which is not easy to
Yeah,
do.
Andre, it's interesting because like I've interviewed a lot of people, and that's another theme that comes up is the founders piece. Like I just had the guy from Expandy, the LinkedIn software, on
Yeah.
Oliver Kenyon. He's like a conversion rate guy. All these guys had
Yeah.
like big sort of exits, and they all like credit the co-founder and like finding the skills that like don't match your own, or like filling in the blanks,
Yeah.
because it's like
Complimentary.
you can fill in the, like, dude, I had the agency, we were doing like whatever 100K plus, we were doing like solid revenue, but I hired so many W2s, like just like straight
Yeah.
employees, to fill in the blanks of me, and they don't have the same passion like that your
Yeah.
founders or people that you have like person, you know what I'm saying, you have that rapport with. So like they really can't scale your company the same way. Like if you were talking about like one of your co-founders is more of a sales guy, like you're bringing in the sales guy co-founder is going to do a lot more for the business
Oh
than an
yeah.
employee.
Founder-led sales is by far like the most effective way to
Yeah.
do it.
Nice.
Yeah.
So cool. So and then with so why did you guys how did the pivot happen from the agency to like this? I don't know how you brand like Client Ascension, like what type of company that
Yeah, coaching
coaching
program.
program, yeah.
So essentially, the journey was with Knowledge X as we followed Daniel or Cold Email Wizard on Twitter for a while, went through his original cold email mastery program to learn how to do cold email. Because when we did the agency, it was a LinkedIn outreach agency to
Got
start.
it.
Then we bolted on cold email, and then we just scrapped the LinkedIn altogether and went all in on cold email because similar to you, like we saw that all of our results were really coming through email. And it was more scalable, and LinkedIn was just it was becoming a wasteland in terms of like all the automation tools and the DMs being limited to a certain amount per week and whatever else. So we went all in on cold email, scaled our agency for a year and a half. We went from zero to 100,000 a month just through sending cold emails and posting on Twitter in a year and a half. And once we did that, like we really caught the attention of Daniel because we were probably one of his most successful students in terms of starting a cold email agency. Everyone else that we, were talking to in the beginning stages that were also going through Daniel's course, starting their cold email agency, like they fell off. And so we stuck it out the longest, had the most success. And then we went to Daniel. We partnered on an info product that was really like inbox manager training.
Okay.
And that crushed. Like that was our first taste of info, like of info marketing or info products was this swipe file that Daniel sold as his own thing. And that did over 100K in less than a month, which was crazy for us because like the amount of effort to do 100K with the agency was like 1,000 times what we just did with the info product. So that's when we got addicted to like info products are scalable and they're also helping people, of course, because we can help a lot of people that are stuck in that same beginning stage that we were in for a while with our agencies. So after that first initial info product, we basically pitched the idea of doing a full out coaching program to help guys that are just starting their agency to grow the same way we did. And then it turned into this whole thing where it's so much bigger than that now, where it's not just myself and Daniel and my business partners coaching guys. It's like we have over 20 coaches. So like Oliver, you mentioned, he came in and did a guest coaching call on like website and CRO. But we have like 20 like in-house expert coaches on all things like cold email, running Facebook ads, building a VSL, building a landing page or a website, mindset, which is always important for younger entrepreneurs. It just covers everything: offer creation, LinkedIn lead gen, you name it, appointment setting, sales, of course, cold email, of course, operations, hiring, fulfillment, like everything. There's an expert coach and a weekly coaching call on that with content in the learning platform as well. And so, yeah, that was a transition was like, we hit the agency 100K milestone, continued with that, but there were so many people that lagged behind and couldn't get out of that starting phase that were following Daniel and were now following us as well, that were just like needing our help.
So what do you think is like the key? I got a follow-up question, but what do you think is like the key value piece of a program like what you guys do? Like, I'm just curious. Like, I know I talked to Hildebrandt, another guy that came through you guys. Lucera,
Yeah.
I think, is the other guy.
Yeah.
Like, is it most? Do you find like because I've coached people before, frankly, like time wise, do you know what I'm saying? Like, people don't take your advice. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of it is probably more in like the community and the connections. Like, do you like what is the main? Is the main value really the knowledge, or is it this? Because they can obviously go, buy the course.
Yeah.
Like, where's the real value at?
Yeah, so I mean, we get this a lot, and I've been through coaching programs too, and I have that feedback as well, where
Yeah.
I'll join and I don't actually end up doing anything and not really getting the value. But there's something different about Client Ascension, where, like for example, like people really respect Daniel and what he has to say, and so like when Daniel is being very direct with students, like they, for whatever reason, like take it more seriously than if they were to hear some other coach or were in some other
Right.
program. And that's why you see guys like Ryan Hilderbrand and Matt Lucero, like these are products of going through a program like Client Ascension. But I think a big part of it is community, just like with any other program. And like community, what I see that as, it's like the replacement for not having all of the business partners that like we have, right? Because you're getting to the same place with having a community of other people that have different skill sets and can give you answers to different problems that you're probably dealing with. And then I think the thing with Client Ascension that's so different is like, and it's bad to say this because I know other coaches and coaching programs care, but I think we just care more than anyone else. Like like if someone gets advice from us and doesn't do anything with it, like we'll go so far to like get on a call with that person and like yell at them.
Yeah.
Like legit, like Daniel will yell at people. Like I feel like Client Ascension does something really different, which is like we bully our students into like doing the things we know they need to do. And that comes from conviction. Like we've done it so many times ourselves and have seen the people who have done it in the program, like the Matt Luceros and Ryan Hildebrands, to know that like this is what you need to do, nothing else but this. So go do exactly that and don't come back to me until you have. And so I think there's the culture that we've created with Client Ascension. It creates like this environment where that is expected and people respond well to it, where other coaching programs are kind of just like, I just don't feel like there's as strong of a culture with really any other program out there.
Andre, and do you think like going like the brotherhood like piece of it is big? Like you know what I'm saying? Like a lot the people who come into these entrepreneurship programs, let's face it, it's young guys. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like
Yeah, dude, it's just college, bro.
Yeah.
It's literally college. Like it's funny the amount of times that a kid will join the program and then a couple weeks into it, like post a message in Slack, like, "Hey, should I drop out of college?" And like then actually proceed to go and do that. So like I'm not responsible if a parent is listening and your kid joined Client Ascension and then proceeded to drop out of college and you're mad, take it up with someone else, not me.
Mhm.
But like that legit happens. And I think the reason is because the way Client Ascension was designed, it's by studying universities. So like I'm kind of the guy behind the scenes, like designing the program. And the way I've designed it is like the same way when you enroll into university, you have multiple classes that you have to go to every single day. So for Client Ascension, there's multiple coaching calls on different topics that you go to every day. With that, you have small groups, right? So we have small groups. With that, you have one of the number one components of our program that I recommend to any other coach out there, if you're not already doing this, is student success coaches. So the same way when you enroll in university, you have a guidance counselor that you go to and you tell them, hey, I'm trying to get this degree or I'm aiming to have a job in this career. Then they reverse engineer it by telling you exactly the courses to take each semester.
Yeah.
We have that.
Yeah.
So when you join Client Ascension, you have a student success coach, aka a guidance counselor, to tell you based on where your business is at today and where you want it to be 6 months from now, exactly the courses to go to every day, exactly the coaches to get close with every day, exactly the other students that are on that same path as you are to get close to. And I think it's just really tailored to where people are at.
Yeah.
Like we take the time to figure that stuff out.
Well, it's also like, dude, if you're taking that dive into entrepreneurship, right? Like your buddies, or maybe like they're like in your case, dude, like you have your partners or your buddies, so they're already into entrepreneurship. But a lot of people, like their buddies, are taking jobs out of school, right? Interviewing, so it's like you kind of need that peer pressure, just like emotion, like that kind of support and grounding to see from people that had it. So like guys like Hildebrand and Lucero, like when these guys come in, dude. Like they're obviously hungry. They don't have any business set up really when they start with you guys. But like, are you able to kind of see, like, did you know those guys were going to be like, obviously some people come in, maybe they give up or whatever.
Yeah.
But do you know those guys are going to be like big superstars?
You can tell by, like it's gotten down to a science at this point, which is why I think our success rate is as high as it is now. Because like if you don't catch the trends early on that this person is going to be successful, then you can adjust course. But like we know what the successful guys do. Like when someone like Ryan joins, like they take massive action. They provide more value in the community than they ask of the community. And then the quality of their questions is really where you can tell.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of guys will come in and they'll ask a lot of questions, which is good. But then you look at the questions and they're like really NPC type questions.
Yeah.
It's like,
does this look like the Discord thing? Yeah,
it's like what should I respond to this email? So here's a great example, right?
Do it yourself, right? It's like,
instead of hey, what should my cold email script be? That's the wrong question.
Right.
The right question is, hey, I went through the program, implemented what you taught, and put together this cold email script. Can you review it for me? Right. And like that goes across the
That's
board
so
for
true.
landing pages and DSLs and everything else we
Yeah.
teach. And like that's the quality of question that we can tell like right away, this person's going to be successful.
Nice. So I guess shifting gears a little bit to ListKit. So I was mentioning before, like I did a cold email agency. We were pricing it like $2,500 a month. We sent like 30,000 emails, dude. I wasn't basing this off of anything. Like I just learned the cold email on my own, fucking did it.
Yeah.
But it was like, and the clients were like more established, bit like larger types of businesses. So they could afford to like eat a 2,500 and like not get too many leads. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like a pay performance situation.
That's great.
But so we had a contract with Apollo. It was like 150 a year. I had other contracts with Zoom Info where it was like a ton of money, like way overpriced for the amount of leads. So I was always thinking like, dude, how can I figure out this list? You know, can I do a SaaS on the side or something? You know what I'm saying? Like invest in, and I was approached by a few people who wanted to do something. Like, how do you take the dive on that? Did you guys just like, are you just investing like your capital from other businesses smartly that you can just jump on these on an opportunity, or you had that idea really dating back to 21 or whatever?
Yeah. So like right when we had the idea back in 2021, same issue that you ran into. It's like list building was becoming a huge bottleneck. It was eating so much into margins
Right.
and time. Like it would just delay the process overall more than anything else. Because we could write a script same day, we could set up email accounts same day, but building the list would take forever. And there are so many issues with Apollo. But anyways, we found out like ways around bottlenecks, and we built a really skilled team that would do it for us internally. And so we knew that was an opportunity to productize the service and outsource it to other agencies to say, hey, if you're also struggling with building lists and it's taking too much time and it's too expensive, just have us do like a concierge list building for you. And as soon as that like
And they
registered
like
and
that
it was,
too. Like the clients, like when you give them the list as like a
bro,
deliverable in the project,
bro, they love
they
it.
love
It was a
the little
huge hit.
dashboard KPIs.
Yeah, so it was a huge hit with the customers early on, and we knew right away like we want to build SaaS. Like we have agency, we have the coaching program. Like what's the next best business model that everyone talks about? SaaS. But we knew like we didn't want to go the VC route because as soon as you go the VC route, at least from my experience, what I've heard, it's like you're no longer in control. And the way we run our businesses, bro, like
You don't want
dude,
that, dude.
it's so
You
different.
guys are beyond
It's
that.
so
You don't
different.
need that, dude. The VC guys
Yeah,
are,
it's like
different story.
bro, we run very unconventional businesses, but it works for us, and that's why we do it that way. But anyways, we knew we didn't want to go VC route, so the way we were going to fund the development was through reinvesting cash flow. Because ListKit was a business on the side of the agency that was already doing 6 figures a month, and then Client Ascension that was doing multiple 6 figures a month. And so we didn't need to like extract capital from that business. So we figured let's just kick the can down the road and play the long game. And every single month reinvest the 10 or 20 or $30,000 we were making back into the business and just develop the software. For the first year and a half, every single thing we reinvested into completed like went to nothing. Like we had nothing to show for. So in October of 2022, a year and a half into it, we had already invested over 150 grand into building the software and had literally nothing to show for because of just the mistakes we made along the way, hiring the wrong developers, not having the most clear vision for what we were trying to build, and just the overall complexity of building like a data product.
Right.
We just didn't understand it at the time until we found our CTO now, and that was really what changed the game. We probably invested another $150,000 from October 2022 to now in July 2023 when we launched. But it actually worked out in our favor
Right.
the way we wanted it to. So yeah, it was expensive, but we had cash flow from not only just ListKit being a productized service, but from all the other businesses that we had alongside
Do
it.
you think it'd be harder to do if you guys didn't already have the captive audience with Daniel and like the
Oh my God, that was the other big thing. It's like as soon as, well, one, we were able to test the idea as a productized service. So we knew people like had this pain point. And if we could solve it through a productized service, if somehow we found out how to do self-serve SaaS, we'd be able to make it cheaper and more accessible, which means if someone's going to buy it for $1 a lead, everyone's going to buy it for 10 cents a lead when they could get it a lot cheaper and quicker, right? So it was already proven through that. And then, of course, through our audiences, we're teaching people how to do cold email. Part of doing cold email is getting leads so we could send them to ListKit.
Yeah.
And so it was very integrated with like this bigger ecosystem that we're building. So as soon as we launched the software, like we got to 1 million ARR within 90 days. I think it was like 86 days. It took us to get to 1 million ARR with a SaaS business that's selling like $80 a month subscriptions, which is like no funding, no anything. It's like unheard of. And it was because of, the audience, the 2 years prior where we did productized service.
Sure. Yeah. Dude, I actually have like a Daniel Crowley. That's like one of your co-founders, right? Or he related to you or something? I read that somewhere.
Yeah, he's my cousin actually.
Nice, dude. Yeah, so I have a LinkedIn DM from like 4 years ago.
No way.
So
writing a book.
You remember this?
Yeah, dude, this is hilarious. So this was one of our first agency businesses. One of the guys that helped us start our podcast, Roger, helped me write my first book.
Nice.
And essentially, we turned that into a coaching program where we would help other people write books.
That's so cool.
And then we just used LinkedIn automation. So this is funny to bring up the story back to this. The way we started our lead gen agency was doing like outreach for this author program. The author program we hated doing. It's like I didn't want to teach people how to write a book. Like I wrote one book. It's not like I really know what I'm doing.
It's the funnel to the next thing. It's kind of like.
But what we did do really well with that was getting leads for it through LinkedIn outreach.
Right.
So we're like, well, if we could get it for this offer, why couldn't we get it for everyone else's offer? So we went from selling an author course to doing LinkedIn lead gen as a service.
Yeah.
So that's funny.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to ask you was like, not to deviate away from ListKit, which I think is super interesting, but I'm a big time Catholic here. Okay. So I actually was involved. One of my first marketing project was this app called Hallow, which is like the biggest prayer app.
Dude, I listen to that every morning.
Yeah, dude. It's funny because I was doing their website and all that type of stuff, and I was going to come on the team basically. But I was like, I just want $5,000 on the website. This was in like 19.
Wow.
So, and then they ended up,
it blew up.
It's a great app too, like for, you know what I'm saying? And those guys they also had a very strong team. Like the co-founders were top. They already had like the archbishop and like all sorts of crazy shit. Even when I was talking to them and they had no money, and they like were trying to do the website cheap and the SEO stuff. But that's an interesting thing. Like, how do you find like sort of injecting that in the kind of in the business? Like I saw this video from your event or meetup doing a little group prayer. Like I thought that was a nice touch, man.
Yeah, dude. So that's going back to the culture, right? I think like the way we define culture is just being so like unapologetically yourself. And most people, especially I would say even a past version of myself, was afraid to do that in business settings because it's like, all right, it's business, you act differently, and then outside of business, do whatever you want. So whatever happened when we started Client Ascension, we just did not care. Like we were just going to be like, we're going to be like our own authentic selves. We're going to talk how we want to talk, like on our podcast, at events, the way we do things. And if people like it, great. If not, no problem. And people loved it. And so that's how Client Ascension grew. And so like, that's what people love about Client Ascension is like, we have a Bible study every Friday. Like, I don't know any other business coaching program that actively promotes a Bible study every single week, especially when I have team members that are both Jewish and Muslim. Right. So like this isn't a practical approach to like being like, oh yeah, everyone agrees with this, so I'm going to do it. It's like, no, this is just what I believe in. And I'm going to put it out there because this is my community that I created.
It goes back to like not taking the VC money. And like, that's one of the beauties of like bootstrapping and whatever is that you have the freedom to kind of pursue like influencing the environment. And that's really ultimately, like the watches and the bottle service can only get you so far, right? Like you want to have that impact and see like spread your message. Otherwise, like it's really not worth it.
Yeah. And So one thing that we do, I think, really well is we just talk to our customers. Like our customers are some of our best friends. And like, so they'll talk to us in a really real way
Yeah.
where like they'll tell us like one of the reasons like I really love what you guys are doing and love being a part of Client Ascension is because like you're so different than everyone else. Like you're not flexing the Lambos. Like none of us are flexing anything online,
Yeah.
even though like we very well could be. It's just not us. And we know like we don't need to do that to get the right people into our program. So I think we attract a lot of the right people. For instance, we just had a Client Ascension event like 2 weekends ago. One of the guys that came through, obviously I did like a prayer dinner or whatever. Guy comes up to me after, says like, dude, it's really cool that like faith is a big part of what you do. Like that's something I want to pursue more of with what I'm working on. And now he's like attending Bible studies with me here in Tampa because he also lives here in Tampa. And it's just like, it opens up the door to bring other people into like what we like rather than just doing whatever they like, which is not sustainable because you're just going to burn out as a founder doing what other people want you to do and not what you want to do.
Yeah.
So it's going back all the way to what Gary Vee had originally taught us, which is just do like what you're really passionate about and care about, and it'll attract the right people.
Yeah.
Naturally.
So I guess like tying everything together, is there anything that like that we haven't mentioned sort of that was like super influential in your ability to have success and get to the point that you're at now?
I think the faith part is huge, and my biggest like learning from faith is like no matter what I do, because back then when I was a entrepreneur, for instance, like dude, I was grinding, or at least I thought I was. I was just grinding on the wrong things, and I also didn't understand that like even though I was grinding, it didn't mean that results would be guaranteed, right? So I got frustrated a lot early on because I was working so hard and sacrificing like nights out in college and partying with friends to do entrepreneurship with nothing to show for it, which really like brought me to the brink of quitting. But what I didn't understand at the time was like, I can only control the inputs. Like the outputs are not in my hands. Like they're in the hands of God. That's what I eventually learned. It's like, I'll do the inputs and let God take care of the outputs, however they may be, and be totally fine with that. And as soon as I started to let go more and stop trying to manipulate outputs by taking shortcuts and doing things that went against my beliefs and my core values, that's when things started to open up for me.
Yeah.
So it was like a mix of patience and just understanding that do the work now, but also don't expect the result or don't do the work just to get the result.
Dude, it's funny you bring that up. That's just, it's so valid. And like for me, like I think about before and after, like applying that kind of principle of like put it in God's hands or whatever. It just makes you so much better as an entrepreneur because you really can't be tied so much to the outcome. It's like all about the process. And when you're in that entrepreneur stage, you're very much like, you know what I'm saying?
Bro,
you're looking at
when you're in the entrepreneur stage, I think so. Here's another really practical thing is like, I don't do goal setting anymore. And that's all I used to do as an entrepreneur. I'd be like, oh, I want to do 10 million,
20K, 30K
by the end of 2025. And it's like, who am I to say I can even get there? So like what I say now is like, I want to post a YouTube video every single 100%. Week this month. And then I don't know what that's going to lead to, but every time I've let go of the outcome, God has shown me something way more amazing than I could even have thought of.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, dude, I'm going to do this podcast once a week and see where and then I'm going to get 10,000 downloads. If that's the case and I don't get 10,000 downloads, I'm upset. But instead of now having that goal, it's like, I'm just going to do one podcast a week and see where it takes me. And now all of a sudden I'm sitting in Gary Vee's office in New York City.
Yeah.
Like that's way better than getting 100,000 downloads.
Yeah.
But like I would have never thought of that.
Yeah.
So I just leave it open to whatever God has planned and however he wants to like use the work and the people that, I'm bringing into these projects. And it's been amazing ever since.
Yeah, I think that's a great takeaway. Guys, this is the Entrepreneurial Podcast. Andre, thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me, bro. Appreciate it.